My name is Abigail, and at 45, I never imagined my only son James would stop speaking to me. We were inseparable until his divorce 2 years ago, when I made what I thought was the mature decision to support his ex wife Sophia. I believed I was standing up for truth, but instead, I demolished a relationship I spent 35 years building. Now, as I stare at unanswered texts and missed holidays, I wonder if some bridges once burned can ever truly be rebuilt. Before we get into my story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever found yourself caught in the middle of someone else's relationship drama. I'd love to know if any of you have experienced family fallout over taking sides in a divorce. Life as a single mother raising James in Seattle wasn't always easy, but we formed a bond that I thought was unbreakable. Every Sunday morning, we had our ritual of blueberry pancakes and board games, creating memories that sustained us through the tough times. James had this infectious laugh that could brighten even my darkest days, especially when I was struggling to make ends meet at my accounting job. When James got accepted to the University of Washington, I worked overtime for months to help with his tuition. I still remember how he called me first after every exam, whether he aced it or bombed it. And later, when he struggled to find his footing in the financial sector, taking 3 different jobs in 2 years, I was his constant cheerleader, reminding him that finding your path takes time. Then, 7 years ago, James brought home Sophia. She was brilliant, compassionate, and worked as a pediatric nurse. I felt an immediate connection with her warmth and genuine interest in our family stories. She asked about old photos, listened to my gardening woes, and actually wanted to learn my secret recipe for apple pie, something James had never shown interest in. Their wedding day was everything I had dreamed of for my son. James looked at Sophia with such adoration, and I gained not just a daughter-in-law, but the daughter I never had. Soon, Sophia and I were having our own traditions, shopping trips to the farmer's market, on Saturdays holiday cooking marathons, where we would spend entire weekends preparing freezer meals for the season. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs sooner. During our family gatherings, James would often check out absorbed in his phone, while Sophia tried to engage him in conversation. When Sophia talked about starting a family, James would change the subject, citing their financial goals. I caught glimpses of tears in Sophia's eyes during one Thanksgiving, when James announced a business trip that would have him missing their anniversary plans. I maintained my role as confidant to both of them. Sophia would call for gardening advice, but end up sharing concerns about their relationship. James would visit for dinner and subtly complain about Sophia's unrealistic expectations about his work hours. I listened to both, offered gentle advice, but never took sides. I believed that was what a good mother and mother-in-law should do, remain neutral and supportive. How naive I was to think that fence-sitting could last forever, or that love alone was enough to weather what was coming. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. Sophia was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. Between gasps, she managed to tell me that James had asked for a separation. My heart dropped to my stomach and my hand trembled as I clutched the phone. I struggled to find the right words, something comforting yet neutral. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Do you want to come over?" "We can talk about it," I offered, trying to keep my voice steady despite the shock. When I called James later that evening, his version was clinical and detached. "Things weren't working out. We want different things. It's for the best, Mom." The following week, I invited James for dinner, hoping to understand more. As I served his favorite lasagna, a peace offering of sorts, he launched into his grievances. According to him, Sophia was emotionally demanding, unable to understand the pressures of his career, and constantly nagging about starting a family when he wasn't ready. "She knew what she was signing up for when she married me," he said, stabbing at his food. "I never hid my ambitions. Now suddenly I'm the bad guy because I'm building our future." Something in his tone gave me pause. This wasn't the compassionate son I'd raised. As he spoke, memories surfaced last Christmas when Sophia sat alone for 2 hours because James was on a quick call that never ended, the 3 dinner reservations canceled last minute because of work emergencies, Sophia's birthday, when James gave her a gift card because he didn't have time to shop. When Sophia called the next day, her story painted a different picture. She described years of emotional neglect of James, prioritizing work over their relationship of conversations about starting a family continuously postponed. She wasn't asking for James to quit his job, but simply to be present when he was home. "I didn't mind the long hours, Abigail," she explained. "But when he was physically home, he was never emotionally there. I've been married, but alone for years." I found myself in an impossible position. My maternal instinct was to defend my son, but my woman's intuition and years of observations told me Sophia wasn't exaggerating. I tried to mediate, suggesting they seek counseling. James refused, calling it a waste of time and money. For weeks, I maintained phone calls with both of them separately, trying to be supportive without choosing sides. But when James discovered I was still in regular contact with Sophia, meeting her for coffee, and checking on her well-being, his reaction caught me off guard. "Whose mother are you anyway?" he snapped during a Sunday visit. "She's manipulating you with her victim act and you're falling for it." I was stunned by his coldness. "James supporting Sophia doesn't mean I'm not supporting you. It's possible to care about you both." He didn't see it that way. As he left that day, slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the windows, I felt the first real fracture in our relationship, a tiny fault line that would soon become an unbridgeable chasm. As weeks turned into months, the divorce proceedings grew increasingly hostile. James's comments about Sophia became more vicious, painting her as calculating and vindictive. He complained about her unreasonable financial demands, though I knew she was only asking for what the law entitled her to after supporting him through his early career struggles. "She's trying to ruin me, Mom," he said during one tense dinner at my house. "After everything I've done for her, this is how she repays me." I nodded and murmured sympathetically, but doubt had taken root in my mind. The James I was seeing during this divorce bore little resemblance to the son I'd raised. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Marion, a mutual friend of the couple, called me in tears. "Abigail, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. James has been having an affair with Tara from his office. It's been going on for at least a year. Sophia found messages on his phone, and that's what triggered the separation." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I sat down, my legs suddenly unable to support me. This wasn't just about workaholism or different life goals. My son had betrayed his marriage vows, and now he was villainizing Sophia to justify his actions. When James came for dinner the following Sunday, I couldn't hold back. "Were you ever going to tell me about Tara?" I asked as he sipped his beer. His face hardened instantly. "Who told you about that? Does it matter? Is it true?" He set his beer down with deliberate slowness. "It's complicated, Mom. Sophia and I were having problems long before Tara." "So that makes it okay to cheat, to lie. Those aren't the values I raised you with, James." His reaction was defensive, angry. "You have no idea what my marriage was like. Sophia and I were practically roommates, and now you're judging me." "I'm not judging you, James. I'm disappointed. And I'm concerned about how you're treating Sophia now, blaming her, when you're the one who broke your vows." The argument escalated, words thrown like weapons. When he left that night, tension crackled between us like electricity. 2 weeks later came the family gathering for my brother's retirement party. Both James and Sophia had been invited before their separation, and both decided to attend. The atmosphere was awkward, with family members tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. When my cousin innocently asked about their plans for the summer, an uncomfortable silence fell. "Actually, I'll be rebuilding my life as a single woman," Sophia said quietly. "James and I are divorcing." James immediately launched into his practiced narrative about growing apart and wanting different things. Something in me snapped. "James, please stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "There's more to this story than you're sharing." The room fell silent. James stared at me, his expression a mixture of shock and betrayal. "Sophia has been nothing but gracious throughout this process." I continued, looking around at our family. "And she deserves better than to be painted as the villain when she's the one who was betrayed." James left immediately. The text I received that night was cold. "I never thought my own mother would publicly humiliate me. Thanks for nothing." But the final breaking point came during the court proceedings. Sophia's lawyer contacted me asking if I would testify regarding financial matters. During their early marriage, James had lived in my house rent-free while Sophia worked full-time, supporting them both as he established his career. Now James was claiming he had always been the primary provider, and that Sophia had contributed minimally to their financial success. I agreed to testify. Sitting in that courtroom, seeing the shock and rage on my son's face as I calmly stated facts about their early financial arrangements, I felt a terrible certainty that I was crossing a line from which there might be no return. But in that moment, justice seemed more important than loyalty. "You're dead to me," James hissed as he brushed past me outside the courtroom. "Don't call, don't text, we're done." Despite the harshness of his words, I still believed I had done the right thing. Standing up for truth and fairness, even at personal cost, was a value I had always tried to instill in James. Surely once the dust settled, he would understand why I couldn't silently witness Sophia being defrauded and defamed. How wrong I was. The silence that followed was deafening. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts showed as delivered but remained unanswered. Cards sent to his apartment came back marked "Return to Sender." Each rejection was a fresh wound. Desperation drove me to his apartment building one evening. I waited in the lobby for nearly 2 hours until he appeared. The moment he saw me, his face shut down, all emotion wiped clean. "James, please," I began, stepping toward him. "We need to talk about this." "No, we don't," he replied, his voice eerily calm. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I'm your mother. You should have remembered that before you betrayed me." He walked past me to the elevator, standing with his back to me, until the doors closed. A week later, I received my first and only communication from him. A terse email. "Mom, I need space and time. Your actions have shown me where your loyalties lie, and they're clearly not with me. Please respect my wishes and stop attempting to contact me. James." 5 sentences to end 35 years of motherhood. As weeks turned to months, the reality of our estrangement rippled outward. Mutual family friends began taking sides. My sister Caroline stopped inviting James and me to the same events, forcing family members to navigate awkward scheduling to accommodate our rift. Holidays loomed like punishment on the calendar. I missed his 36th birthday. I learned through Facebook that he had received a major promotion. Thanksgiving came and went, the first in his life that we didn't spend together. I made his favorite cornbread stuffing anyway, then cried over the leftovers I would never share with him. The worst was running into him at Marcello's, our favorite Italian restaurant. I was dining with a friend when he walked in with a group of colleagues. Our eyes met across the room, and for a brief, hopeful moment, I thought he might acknowledge me. Instead, he spoke to the hostess, and his entire party was relocated to the restaurant's other section. The public rejection stung worse than any private one. My depression deepened. Friends stopped asking about James, which somehow hurt more than their awkward inquiries. My world contracted until it felt like I was merely going through the motions of living. Through it all, I maintained my friendship with Sophia. She had been deeply hurt by James's betrayal, but was rebuilding her life with admirable strength. We still met for coffee every few weeks, and I followed her journey through the stages of grief and healing. It was bittersweet to witness her recovery, knowing my own relationship with James remained fractured. "He'll come around, Abigail," Sophia reassured me during one of our meetings. "He's hurt and prideful, but deep down he knows you were just being honest." I clung to that hope until Sophia called with news that shattered it. She had accepted a nursing position in Colorado and would be moving the following month. "It's time for a fresh start," she explained. "There are too many memories here." As I helped her pack, the finality of the situation hit me. I had lost my son, and now I was losing the woman who had become like a daughter to me. Standing in her empty apartment on moving day, I realized I had somehow managed to end up with neither relationship intact. "Keep in touch," Sophia said, hugging me tightly. We both knew that the distance would change things, that our bond had been forged partly through shared grief over James. "I will," I promised, forcing a smile, as I waved goodbye to the second casualty of my decision to stand up for what I believed was right. The first holiday season after the fallout was when I truly hit rock bottom. Christmas had always been our special time. James and I had traditions dating back to his childhood, an ornament exchange on Christmas Eve special, Belgian waffles on Christmas morning, a movie marathon in our pajamas. That December, I pulled the decorations from the attic out of habit, then sat surrounded by boxes, unable to summon the will to open them. What was the point of hanging stockings that would remain empty or setting up the artificial tree we had decorated together for 20 years? I found myself drawn to old photo albums. There was James at 5 missing his front teeth, proudly holding up his first caught fish. James at 10, gangly and serious in his science fair blazer. James at 18, arm around my shoulders at his high school graduation, both of us beaming with pride and possibility. I completely broke down. Deep, guttural sobs that felt ripped from some primal place within me. I cried until I was empty, surrounded by the physical evidence of a relationship that now existed only in photographs and memories. On his birthday, I sent a simple text. "Happy birthday, James. I love you, Mom." The automated notification showed it was delivered, but no response came. Social media became both comfort and torture. I couldn't stop myself from checking James's profiles, hungry for glimpses of his life. That's how I discovered he had gotten engaged to someone named Lauren. There they were, smiling in a professionally shot engagement photo, her hand with a sparkling ring prominently displayed. The caption read, "She said yes, excited for this next chapter with the love of my life." The comment section overflowed with congratulations, including from family members who hadn't told me the news. I learned my own brother had known for weeks, but hadn't mentioned it, uncertain if it was his place to tell me. The questions from acquaintances became increasingly difficult to navigate. "How's James doing? Will you be planning the wedding? Have you met his fiancée yet?" Each innocent inquiry was a fresh reminder of my exclusion from my son's life. The most painful moment came at a community fundraiser. I was examining the silent auction items when I overheard a conversation between an older couple and a younger woman. "We're just so thrilled about the engagement," the woman was saying. "Lauren has always had excellent taste, but James is really something special." With a sinking feeling, I realized these must be James's future in-laws. They had no idea who I was. I was standing 3 feet away from people who would be family to my son, and they didn't recognize me. I slipped away before anyone could notice the tears in my eyes. That night, I seriously considered moving away. Perhaps a fresh start in another state would help me escape the constant reminders and painful encounters. I went as far as browsing real estate listings in Arizona, imagining a life where no one knew me as poor Abigail whose son disowned her. It was my sister Diane who finally gave me the wake-up call I needed. When I mentioned my relocation plans during our weekly phone call, she was uncharacteristically blunt. "So your solution is to run away. How exactly will that fix anything, Abigail?" "It's not about fixing," I defended. "It's about finding peace." "Peace comes from within, not from changing your zip code," she countered. "Have you ever really confronted your role in this mess?" "My role, I stood up for what was right. Did you, though, or did you insert yourself into a situation that wasn't yours to fix?" James and Sophia's marriage was between them. His affair was wrong, absolutely. But was it your place to publicly shame him and testify against him? Her words felt like a slap. I was standing up for Sophia. Sophia is an adult who can stand up for herself. She had a lawyer. She had the law on her side. What she didn't need was her mother-in-law swooping in like some avenging angel, humiliating her soon-to-be ex-husband in front of the entire family, and then in court. I started to protest, but Diane wasn't finished. "You didn't just take sides, Abigail. You became an active participant in their divorce. You crossed a boundary that parents of adult children should never cross. And now you're surprised he wants nothing to do with you." That conversation, painful as it was, marked the beginning of my real understanding of what had gone wrong. Not just in James and Sophia's marriage, but in my relationship with my adult son. The next morning, I made an appointment with Dr. Lenora Franklin, a family therapist specializing in parent-child estrangements. Walking into her office felt like admitting defeat, but also like taking the first step towards something better. "Tell me why you're here, Abigail," she invited after introductions. "My son won't speak to me because I supported his ex-wife during their divorce." I began, then paused. "No, that's not quite right. He won't speak to me because I testified against him in court and publicly took her side. Dr. Franklin nodded. That's an important distinction. Can you tell me what made you decide to take such an active role in their divorce? Over the next hour, I poured out the whole story. To my surprise, Dr. Franklin didn't immediately assure me I'd done the right thing as friends had. Nor did she condemn me as I'd begun to condemn myself. It sounds like you were trying to stand up for what you saw as justice, she observed. But I'm curious about something. What made you feel it was your responsibility to ensure justice in your adult son's divorce? The question stopped me short. I guess I felt someone had to hold him accountable. Was that someone supposed to be his mother? That question lingered with me long after the session ended. Through weekly therapy, I began to understand the complex dynamics at play. Franklin helped me see that my actions, while well-intentioned, had violated fundamental boundaries. Adult children, even when they make mistakes, need to know their parents are in their corner, she explained. That doesn't mean approving of everything they do, but it does mean finding ways to maintain connection while still expressing your values. But what about standing up for what's right? I asked. There are many ways to honor your values without positioning yourself as your adult child's judge and jury, she replied. You could have maintained a relationship with Sophia without becoming her advocate against your son. You could have expressed your disappointment to James privately without public shaming. These insights were painful, but transformative. I began to see that my involvement had been as much about my need to control the narrative and enforce justice as it was about supporting Sophia. And in the process, I'd lost sight of something crucial. James was still my son, despite his mistakes. With Dr. Franklin's guidance, I wrote a letter to James. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten letter that took me 7 drafts to get right. I didn't make excuses for my actions. I didn't try to justify my choices. Instead, I took full responsibility for overstepping boundaries and violating the trust between us. I confused being your mother with being your moral compass, I wrote. I forgot that my role in your adult life is not to judge or correct you, but to love you even when I disagree with your choices. I am deeply sorry for the public humiliation I caused you, and for inserting myself into what should have been a private matter between you and Sophia. I mailed the letter without expectation of response. It wasn't a strategic move to reestablish contact, but a necessary step in my own healing. Meanwhile, I worked on rebuilding my life beyond my identity as James's mother. I joined a gardening club, reconnected with old college friends I'd lost touch with during my years of intensive mothering, and even started taking watercolor classes, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I also found a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. Hearing others' stories helped me feel less alone and provided practical strategies for respecting boundaries while keeping the door open for reconciliation. 3 months after sending the letter, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I'd nearly memorized from staring at it so often, willing it to contact me. Got your letter. Been thinking about it. Would be willing to meet for coffee next Saturday at the Greenleaf Cafe. 10 a.m. 12 words that sent my heart racing. I read them over and over, afraid they might disappear if I looked away. I responded with a simple, "I'll be there. Thank you." For the first time in almost 2 years, I had hoped that the bridge between us, while severely damaged, might not be completely beyond repair. I arrived at the Greenleaf Cafe 30 minutes early, my stomach in knots. I chose a table by the window, ordered a chamomile tea to calm my nerves, and waited, checking the door every time it opened. At exactly 10 a.m., James walked in. He looked older, somehow more serious, his formerly boyish face now showing lines around his eyes. He spotted me immediately, but didn't smile as he approached. "Hi, Mom," he said, taking the seat across from me. "James," I replied, my voice threatening to break on just that one word. "Thank you for coming." An awkward silence followed as he ordered black coffee. I had rehearsed this moment countless times, but now that it was here, words failed me. "Your letter," he finally said. "It was different from your other attempts to contact me." I nodded. "I've done a lot of thinking. A lot of therapy, too." "So have I, actually." He looked out the window. "Lauren suggested it. Said she didn't want to marry someone who had unresolved family trauma." She sounds wise. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She is. I took a deep breath. James, I want to apologize again face to face. What I did was wrong. Not just testifying in court, but all of it, publicly taking sides, inserting myself into your divorce, trying to be some kind of moral arbiter. I overstepped boundaries that should never be crossed. He was quiet for a long moment. I needed my mother, he finally said, his voice low and controlled. Not another adversary. Do you have any idea what it felt like to see you sitting there in court, helping Sophia's lawyer paint me as some kind of monster? I can only imagine, I admitted, and I'm so sorry. What I did to Sophia was wrong, he continued, surprising me with his candor. The affair, the lies, the way I checked out of our marriage long before I physically left. I'm not proud of any of it, but it was my mess to deal with, my consequences to face. Yes, I agreed. You're right. He studied me, perhaps searching for signs of the argumentative mother who had taken it upon herself to make sure he got what he deserved. My therapist helped me understand something, he said after a pause. We never really established adult boundaries, you and I. I went from being your son to being Sophia's husband, but I never really became my own person in your eyes. You still saw me as someone you needed to guide and correct. His insight took my breath away. I think that's very perceptive, I managed, and I'm working on changing that perspective. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. We didn't solve everything. Nothing that broken can be fixed in one coffee meeting. But we established some basic parameters for moving forward. James suggested monthly check-ins, neutral ground, no discussions of the past for now. I'd like to introduce you to Lauren eventually, he said as we prepared to leave. But I need to know that you'll respect our relationship. No unsolicited advice, no comparisons to how things were with Sophia, no trying to manage our lives. I understand, I assured him. I'm learning to be a mother to an adult son, not just a son. As we stood to leave, he hesitated, then gave me a brief, stiff hug. It wasn't the warm embrace we'd once shared so easily, but it was contact the first in 2 years, and I cherished it. Over the following months, our tentative reconnection continued. Our monthly coffees became more relaxed. I met Lauren 4 months later, a bright, straightforward woman who clearly adored James and saw the best in him. I was careful to follow James's boundaries. No advice unless asked, no prying questions, no assumptions of intimacy we hadn't rebuilt yet. The invitation to their small wedding ceremony came 6 months later. It wasn't the central role I'd once imagined for myself at my only son's wedding. I wasn't consulted on plans or included in pre-wedding events. I was simply a guest seated with extended family, rather than at the parents' table. But I was there watching with genuine joy as James began a new chapter. Hopefully wiser from his past mistakes, our relationship continues to heal slowly and with occasional setbacks. I've learned that reconciliation isn't a destination, but an ongoing process requiring patience, humility, and consistent respect for boundaries. The most important lessons I've learned through this painful journey are these adult children are not extensions of ourselves, but separate individuals entitled to make their own choices, even when those choices are mistakes. Being right matters far less than being connected. And sometimes, the most loving thing a parent can do is step back and allow natural consequences to unfold without intervention. I still think about Sophia sometimes. We exchange birthday texts and occasional updates. She's remarried now to a kind doctor in Colorado and expecting her first child. I'm happy for her new beginning, but mindful that my relationship with her needs to respect James's boundaries too. Every family estrangement has its own unique story and resolution, if resolution comes at all. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I got a second chance to be in my son's life not because I pushed my way back in, but because I finally learned to respect the man he is, rather than trying to shape him into the man I thought he should be. If you're going through something similar with your own child, I hope my story gives you both hope and perspective. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with a family member after a major rift? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Healing is possible even from the deepest wounds we create with our own hands. Thank you for listening to my journey.